Hilchos Trumos Perek Achadosar is going to be speaking about using Truma, the permissible and the forbidden. It's going to get a bit technical. This chapter has 28 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. So here's the rule. Truma, we're speaking about for the kohen. Nitenes la'achila u'l'shasiya u'l'sicha. That's what it should be used for: eating, drinking, and smearing oneself with it or anointing oneself with it. Why is one allowed to smear to anoint? Because shahasicha hi kishasiya. Putting something on the body as an ointment is mamish like drinking. Shenemar based on a pasuk. Vatovei kamayim pasuk and tehillim kamayim bekirbayim. That it entered his innards like water, v'cheshemen ba'atzmoisav, and like oil in his bones. Mamish gavaldik. Kamayim bekirbayim mamish the same. V'hashasiya. So anointing or smearing is like drinking. Drinking is like eating. Truma was meant to be eaten, which means that which is meant to be drunk can be drunk. That which is meant to be smeared should be smeared. Lechol davar shadarka lechol, v'lishtos davar shadarka lishtos, and v'lasach davar shadarka los. Now, what do we mean davar shadarka? In other words, if it's fit for that purpose. So lo yasuch yayin v'chometz. Wine and vinegar normally is not smeared. But oil, yeah. Now, what's amazing is that one might have thought that oil should be consumed, should be eaten. No, smearing is like eating, is like drinking. Now, if the oil becomes tamei, truma that's tamei may not be consumed, which means it also may not be smeared on oneself. So now, as we learned, truma that's tamei is not asur b'hano. Adarabah, it's meant to be used as fuel. Umadlik esatamei. And now you know, says the Rambam, that every time you hear the word shemen sreifa means oil of truma that is tamei, and therefore it's only good to be used as fuel to be burnt. Okay. No, it's this concept of using something for that which it is fit for. Let's go on to halacha beis. Tamarim shel truma. If you want to take dates of truma, you want to compress them. You want to collect them as a cake of dried dates. That is something that's permitted. However, what you may not do with dates is you may not turn it into beer. Why may you not turn it into beer? Guys, this is the rule, because one should not make truma, which is food, into a liquid. Even though I know some people say, oh, beer is like the best thing in the world. But no. Nisht. Food should be left as food. Don't make dates into honey. This concept that something which is food should not be made into a liquid, not make apples into wine, right? What's it called? Apple or cider, whatever they call it. Fall produce. People used to turn it into vinegar because it's going to go off. You may not do that. In other words, ein mishanin oisa mibriyasim batruma. You may not change them from the natural state. The only two fruits that are allowed to be changed from the natural state is zeisim va'anavim, because we say that olives and grapes lechatchila were made by Hashem for them to be turned into oil and wine. Now, regarding all of the above, if you did make you made the dates into beer, then you can drink it. Obviously, a coin. Now, what happens if a zar she'achol dvash tamarim v'yayin tapuch v'chayitza be'emish gaga? This is amazing. So we learned yesterday. We learned in the 10th chapter, in the last chapter, right? B'shoigig, keren v'choimish, b'mezid. You have to pay the keren. Here, you don't have to pay at all. This is amazing. In other words, once you changed its form, it's no longer considered. It's no longer considered fruit. It's only considered a byproduct. You're not allowed to have it, but you don't have to be penalized. All you get is makas mardus. One may not place dried dates or dried figs, obviously that are truma. You may not place it into brine. Why is that? Because it ruins them. In other words, the brine, yakir, gets bettered. But these items get ruined. But putting wine into brine is permitted. In other words, it improves the flavor of the brine, and you end up consuming brine with wine. That's the pshat. Masha enkein by the tvela and the groigeris, that gets ruined. Actually, mistama that you threw out. Another thing, ve'ein befatmin es hashemen. Don't place fragrant herbs into oil. We're speaking about herbs of truma. People will do that to make the oil smell better, because you transform those herbs from food, and you make them into ointing oil. But what could you do? By the way, this was a common food in the times of Chazal. Why is that? Today we make almost all yain mavushal, right, to avoid the issue of a guy moving the wine, yain nesa, yain stam. You may not do it because while you are boiling it, you will reduce its quantity. You may not pickle onions of truma in vinegar. That's truma. Why? Because even though the onions get better, yakir, the vinegar gets ruined. And that's the word. If chaymitz of truma, in other words, it has to be consumed for that which is normally consumed for. Don't use it for something which ruins it, even though it betters the onions. Another thing, you're not allowed to mix tfuah and kitniyos. People in the times of Chazal would mix tfuah with kitniyos. They were poor people, so you have more kitniyos, but you ruin the grain. You downgrade the grain. Chol davar sheyispadish zemizeh kishekoiverin oisai. Any item that even when you mix them together, Yakir, you can make them distinct again when you sift them. So the mixture is not permanent. You are allowed to mix. It's legumes and grain, evidently, you are unable to fully separate them again. So you're like ruining the grain. Something that you mix together and you can separate them. So what? So separate. This is from poverty. We always speak of the Ezekiel bread, what they call over here is a curse. It's a pasuk of a curse. Because of poverty, there isn't enough food to make bread just out of wheat, just out of barley. So they make it all 5 grains. It's a cursed bread, but that's okay in Golos. But what not? Tfuah bekitnias, because that ruins the grain. So we tolerate five grains. It's a Golos food, but it's not ruined. Here you ruin the grain by mixing it into the kitnias, into the legumes. Hey. Just like people ordinarily sift chulin, flour, what's the problem with sifting? You end up removing whatever and you have less flour. But the whatever is not food. You end up removing that which is not food. So you are allowed to sift. Right? Like wine you can't cook because you're mamatoi. We don't say that by sifting flour, even though you're mamatoi. But so what that you make it less? You're removing that which is not flour.
Makes sense.
Of course it makes sense. Not only because of that, because the wine, yeah, okay, good. But I think it's more than that. The wine itself gets evaporated. By sifting, you're losing be'ikir, pebbles, straw. You're losing a drop of flour, that's insignificant.
But why can't you throw it away then?
Oh, very good. That's the word. In other words, you can mamish throw it away.
You can't.
You throw away the brand. That's the word.
If you just sift it a few times, you can't throw it away.
Very good. The KV you're jumping at. In other words, the chiddush is that brand, you can argue, is something. No, the brand in context of flour is garbage. And since ordinary, you throw it away. So just because it's truma, you can also throw it away. But like Kevin is saying, if you want to sift it many times over, only one kavod kabayim and asah. You know the way they did it in the Beis Hamikdash, they would sift the chveis 13 times. Then that which was separated is still good. Then lo yashlech es ashar, because it's mamish roi lachila. What should you do? You have to put it b'makim mutzna. Why do you have to put it in a guarded place? Because people will think that since it was sifted out of the flour, it has a din of psoilas. Even though people knew it came from truma, they will think this is already not considered the fact that you can throw it away in the beginning of Allah is it's not truma. But if you sifted it many times, that which you separated is not called psoilas. So make sure no one eats it. Allah chavav. Shemen shel truma. oil that's truma, ein choisma by tana v'karayim, don't use it to seal an oven or arrange. In other words, you have to use truma only for a purpose that's directly for the person's physical benefit. And that's not directly physical benefit. Similarly, you cannot smear your middle of a sandal. You know, when you buy new shoes, that's what they did then. They would smear it. You cannot do that, even though it has to be for your personal. While the ragloi is besoich mino, because the oil will, some of the oil will go directly on the shoe and the sandal. If first you only put it on your ragloi, and your ragloi, your foot is still filled with the oil, and now you stick your foot into the middle of the sandal, that's considered permissible. Let me tell you the rule. Once the oil was applied on your body, it loses its kedusha. Now it's no longer a kodesh, because you used it already. What did we learn yesterday? The guy swallowed a prune. Remember that? And then he spit it up. The other guy is chayv to pay him money. In other words, once it was used, it's ois truma. So that's why you can put it. Now, you are allowed to smear your body and roll on a new leather mat. Even though, again, the oil now will be absorbed in the leather mat, because once you put it on the body, it's no longer truma. If you're putting it on a tabla of marble, of course you cannot put it on leather, because it's going to get absorbed. You're going to think, I can put it on marble. Why? Because I want to roll my back on it. How do I get it on my back? Putting it on marble. And it's not going to get absorbed in the marble. You cannot let it do that, because some of it will get ruined. Gewaldig. Halacha zayin, kol oichel truma, afilo peides, another din, guys, a new din, sonach netilas yadayim. And just a quick jumping ahead to tahara, that truma could become tummy even on a level of a shlishi. Chazal made a takana that yodayim, stam yodayim are shniyos. Sheni can be pasul truma. So therefore you have to wash your hands. And as we will learn in another din, when you're eating truma, why? However, the truma schutz la'aretz, which is only midrabanan, yes, nechelas imazar ma'shulchan, and no, ve'ein etzirich lantilas yadayim kechulin. You understand? When your yadayim are tohoides, guys, if someone's yadayim, if you know that it's tamei, of course you have to wash your hands. But we're speaking about stam. Another din is ve'ein sachin truma v'yadayim v'soy avos naf what v'sheida nafal al psarai. That you cannot smear oil that's truma with soiled hands. In other words, with stam yodayim. The same thing, okay. In other words, I'm not allowed to be matam of the oil. So if I want to smear myself with oil, I have to also do netilas yadayim, because my yadayim are stam yadayim shniyas. Truma can become a shlishi. I cannot be matam of truma. Another thing, guys, and that is that a oral is not allowed to use truma. An oral cannot consume truma, but a baby within the 7 days is allowed to be smeared with oil of truma. He doesn't have a circumcision. It doesn't matter. There's no mitzvah yet. You only become an oral from the 8th day if you don't have a bris milah, which taka means that on the 8th day of the baby's birth, on the day where he's going to have a bris milah, prior to the bris, you cannot use truma to anoint the child, the infant. Also, after he did that, maybe ben bita Yisrael magila al gabel, based on the rule that we just said, that once it's used, it loses its kedusha. So the zayda, today they'll get arrested for molesting. I don't know what. He puts oil on himself, and then he takes his grandchild. And obviously, if the grandchild is a kohen, there's no issue. The grandchild is a Yisrael. It's your daughter's son, and you're having him roll on you. So you're getting the oil on your grandson. But by then, since you put it first on you, it lost its kedusha. The im sach atzma b'shem v'nechas lamerchatz also mutzar lezar l'moshche b'merchatz afa pishu nisoich mimenu. Very good. In other words, massaging, same thing. If the Yisrael massages the kohen yakir and the kohen has oil on his back, doesn't bother me that the non-kohen will get oil on his hands. Because once it's applied on the body of it, once it's applied once, it loses Kedusha. Halacha test. Now, tilson is something that cannot be eaten. And he's starting over here. Chilba is a Yemenite paste made out of fenugreek powder, spiced with a kick of zung. I'm reading from Kavan's notes over here on the screen. Thank you. And you have noch a picture from Chilba. So a kohenes that she applied Chilba to her hair. Now, wow. Why? She may rub her hair together with the hair, but not what? Not to remove it. Interesting. No, okay. First, why can you bechal use tilson? Because it's not oil machalado. I think, Yakir, that this chilba, like we saw in the picture, is something a lot more substantial than oil. So I'm thinking that when you put it on your hair, if you're gonna, so for it's seed, so that's yeah, but in other words, in the case, another Yisraelis cannot use what? Cannot use that which remains, the remaining chilba. So you cannot use the remaining chilba. That's it. That's what it is. And if it's directly over here, that's the pshat. Then it could be used. Okay, good. Halacha yud. This is a technical chapter. L'chaim. Uksei te'enim ugroigedes. Stems of figs, whether they are dried figs, whether they are wild figs. Akalisin v'hacharuvim. Kalisin is the wild figs. Charuvim is carobs. Ume'ei avatiach, the insides of melons. Klipei avatiach, the peels of melons and asroigim. And cucumbers, even if they don't have any food as of now. And and peels of vegetables that are discarded by balabatim, because they are still halachically considered food. They are okay. They are like food. But the peels of vegetables that are cut off by the gardeners, they're mamish garbage. They're yes mutaris lazarim. In other words, it's a good cloudless, guys. That which your homeowner cuts off a vegetable and considers waste is not always halachically waste. That which the sacharim, if you are a vendor, that which the vendors cut off from the produce, that's mamish garbage. Because if not, they would have kept it. They would have monetized it somehow. Klipe poilin v'shumshumin. The shells, the casing of beans and of sesame seeds. So if there's any food in them, they are still considered food, and therefore truma, they are not allowed to be eaten by an unkohen. If there's no food in them, now it's considered psoilis. Once it's considered psoilis, it loses its kedushas truma. Halacha 11. Gar'inei esek, seeds of esrogim, are permitted to be eaten. Why are they permitted to be eaten? Because they're so bitter, it's not considered food, it's not considered truma. If it's not food, it's nish. Seeds of olives, dates, and carrots. Even though they were not collected by the kohen, nevertheless, they may not be eaten by a priest. Why? Because, guys, this is the word. Remember this, we learned this in the Gemara. Because there's usually some food attached to them. Because the pit themselves is nothing. Oh, the shar hagarinim and all other seeds, you have to see. This man shekanasan, if they were collected, which means the owner gives them chashivus, collecting them, and there is some lachluchias, there's some moisture which allows the person to suck out that moisture, that is considered food asurim l'darim. But the moment they were thrown out, even if they still have lachluchias, it's your kavana, your das. There's nothing here. Removes its status of oichel. Now it's called psoilus. It loses its kedusha of truma. Azar now can suck it out a little bit of lachluchis. Halacha yud beis. Hasubin shalchitim chadoshis. Ram of wheat may not be eaten. Why? Because it could be eaten by other. However, bran from aged bran, that's mutter. Why is that mutter? It's no longer considered food. Ba'ad masa nikrum chadashois has nothing to do with the oimer. As long as people are still beating the grain at the granaries, That means it's not far away from the harvesting. Once people stop doing that step, because the harvest was so much before, by then the bran of the grain so dried out. That's it. It's not considered food. Halacha Yud Gimel. Lower quality and slightly rotten kernels of grain are still asur. Wow, because they're fit to be eaten. And if you think that nowadays they don't do it, you have no idea what they give you in the restaurants, how they figure out how to get rid of slightly rotten food. Yeah, you better make the specials. Every special is rotten food. And they know exactly the line, and then they put other poisons so you shouldn't get food poisoning. For that, you get headaches and cancers, but you don't get food, but that's all they care about. There's a whole chachma. If they are already producing dust, can you imagine the produce? It's not a little bit rotten. It's already turning into dust. Then, now it's good. Mutaris. Okay. Shmarim shel truma, if you have dregs and you pour water over it, you know what would that water be called, guys, in the Gemara? Yakir nu? Temed. Oh, so the first time they poured the water, the second time they poured the water, there was enough from the grapes, which is truma, which will not allow a kohen to have that temed liquid, that punch. But ashlishi, even though it's a little bit reddish, muter, if it's not about you putting water on it, but you're mesana nayam ala shwan bilvad, if somehow you're straining off the wine, that's always going to be asur. Af ashlishi is asur lazarim. Halacha yudalid, negeda shepina memenu mchite truma. If you cleared kernels of wheat from a grain heap, think about it. You have a grain heap, there's no kernels, but how good do you clean it? But today you have these machines that can probably suck it up. There's always going to be epis of truma on the ground of the granary. Is that a problem? No. And only then can you put chulin into the granary. Novers then, the word machabed means to sweep. And the noise chulin. Not because of bittul. This concept that little remaining on the floor is not called oichel anymore. It's not oichel that has to be bottled. It's not oichel. And you're pouring out the chavias. Go sponge it up. And I think we're speaking about the earth. Not the barrel. The next one will be about the barrel. A person is pouring out oil from a barrel. So again, you don't have to sponge out the whole barrel. You keep on pouring. So first of all, when there's a stream, then of course everything in the stream is called truma. But once this shemen begins lintoif ma'at ma'at, if it begins to drip, no longer a stream. Once 3 drops came out, 3 drops means they were not a stream, not the first 1, 2, 3 afterwards. And as of now, whatever is still in the barrel is not considered oil. But you know what would happen if you didn't do that? But you took the barrel, you turned it upside down and you put it down on the table. You wait an hour or two. Now in the bottom of this card, there's going to be a collection of oil. That's truma. It's amazing. Previously knows when it was pouring out, even though there was still the same amount of oil in it. Since you're pouring it out and it stopped pouring, that's only dripping. Already 1, 2, 3. If you want, you can put in chulin. But now there's oil that collected in the bottom. Is considered truma. Interesting. Halacha tazai. In both cases, they never left the kli, but still we are differentiating. We already said in the beginning of this chapter, shemen sreifa means oil that became tamei. And now this should be used for lachatchila a kohen, but a Yisrael can also get benefit. The noise Yisrael alis boilaliyah uli kanis l'ched lasis tzarchei hakohen. Even though the Yisrael will also benefit. But he's going up the stairs. Why isn't he banging into the wall? Because he has that lamp. Since he's going there for the purpose of a kohen, the Yisrael can use it. And more than that, if he was a shutav with him, then he's allowed. Because the moment when your partner gets his needs met, it benefits the other partner as well. And which, as we learned, when there's both both are getting benefit, like partners, then you are allowed. But in the middle of the meal, the kohen gets up and he leaves. It's at night. You, Yisrael, you're in a room. Right now, the light is coming from Shemin, that's Tameh. But right now, there's no kohen there. Because it was put on beheter. Another din. The Toivel HaYisrael Psila. You can dip a wick in the priest of the lamp. Ad kedei kach. And just to say that the Mishnah Lamelech says like this, that the Isur for Yisrael to benefit from Shemen that's Tameya is only Midrabanan, which is the basis behind all of these dinim. And the last case where I'm dipping, I'm a Yisrael, if I'm dipping it, I'm getting all the benefit. I'm going to be walking away. I don't need for the coin to benefit. That's going to be allowed because there's a danger to be in the dark. How much danger? Whatever, the danger of the dark. And since it's only, that's how he explains this last thing. Halacha Yudches. B'karei shel kohen. Livestock belonging to a kohen. Shehoya oimed eitzel b'karei shel Yisrael. That was standing next to the livestock of a yid, or v'kel shel kohen, garments belonging to a kohen that were being woven next to the garments of a Yisrael. In other words, we're speaking about again what you need to have light. Because vadai the kohen will acquiesce. And why is that? Because since it's a mitzvah that benefit people at large, their takana that you can't, that Yisrael cannot use Shemen Tamei was lachatchila not made. Again, it's a mitzvah. Then madlik shemen sreifa shloi b'reshus hakohen. Madlikin shemen sreifa al gabe yachulin. Guys, chulin over here means sick. Someone is sick. You want to put a fire above a sick person, but for that you already have to have permission. Why is that? Guys, if you remember, people can die in the dark. Remember that? Because here it's for a yachid. What's in the cases above, there was a rabbin involved. Okay, right. Halacha Yutes. Bas Yisrael, shenises l'koyin. Aber v'hi lemuda eitzel avia. She always goes back to her dad. She's really married to her dad. You guys can laugh, but you'll see. You have to make sure that she marries her husband. And normally she's married to her dad is because the dad is not married to his wife, which is another illness. He married his daughter. I'm saying this mamish, not mamish chas v'shalom in the prohibited way. I'm speaking psychologically. It's very common. Man has a bad marriage, so he marries his daughter. Or if the daughter doesn't get along with the mother, which is a normal thing, so she resolves it by marrying her father. When that illness happens, she'll never marry your husband. So she's in with Eitzelavia. So she's going to him the whole time. So what happens? Matlik b'reshusa. In other words, imagine the father can, as long as he has his daughter's permission. Now she is married to the kohen. All of this is based because Shemen Tameya is only asur for Yisrael midrabanan. So she is enough. It's enough for her to give permission. Now, what's the chiddush? The chiddush is that you might think, hold on, there's another issue. If I leave oil out in a very public place, you know what might happen? Someone might take the oil for themselves. No such affair. There's no worry. Because like this, in a Beis HaMishta, everyone goes to a Beis HaMishta dressed nicely. When people are dressed nicely, they're not going to stick their hands into a lamp of oil because they're going to be afraid to soil their garments. In a Beis HaAvel, there's no pnai. People don't feel free. Not that there's no time. Because there's a Morosh Chodesh. When people are in a depressed place, it's like there's a certain giddiness. You go there, let's take some oil, let's wear some oil. No one will do that. But in other settings, you have to have that fear. People won't know that it's Shemen Tameya. They might think it's chulin, and they might use it for sicha. or real people with doggy bags, even though people don't have dogs, they still take the doggy bags. They're going to cook tonight at home. They're going to a party. There's some extra oil. There's so much oil. The party is over in an hour, but there's so much oil in the lamp. They're going to help themselves for their dog. That's why it's called a doggy bag, right? Doggy bag without a dog. Halacha. Oh, Hazurei Asatruma. Oh, new topic. Okay. So what we already mentioned.
Actually, it's for the waiter at the restaurant, Rabbi, the oil.
You think to put a waiter in the restaurant because Bachlal, that was the tip, right? The tip was putting oil on his head. If you plant truma, what will be the status of that which grows? So really, once it takes root, it's an ois truma. The Chachamim made a gzeira, it's really chazir, that what? That if a person, and therefore, theoretically, if you have truma tameya, why do I have to only use it for fuel? I can seed it and I can use it. What will be the problem? If people would be allowed to do that, then they wouldn't burn it right away. Someone won't know that it's tamei, and a kohen might end up eating it. So they said, no. If it's truma and you plant it, whatever grows is truma. You're not benefiting anything. So truma b'shoigeg, you should turn it over. You have to destroy. Now there's a certain benefit. At least you can now plant anew in that same location. B'mezid yekayim, which is even worse. Even worse. In other words, they penalize you. We're not allowed to plant truma. So if you planted truma, yekayim means you can't get rid of it. Now you're going to suffer a loss, as you'll see in a moment. What's the loss? That all of the produce that grows, Yakir, will have a status of truma, and truma has less value than chulin because there's less people that can eat it. So that's it. So they made it. It should not be beneficial for you to plant truma, and all of that was because if you'll have truma tameya, you might plant it, and then people might eat it before you plant it. Once it brings a shlish, bein b'mezid, bein b'shoigeg, it's too late, and yekaim is a punishment. Now, guys, if you plant the truma, it's not pshat what grows is asur. What grows is truma midrabanan. And if you would have planted chulin, Iran, then you would have had the chulin, which is better. No, it's the same work, the same product, and it would have been more valuable. This is less valuable. Even if it came to a shlish, afilu b'mezid yahapeh. Knas konsuboy shelo yizra v'yischaven leyohanas be'etzov. In other words, people will think that the isur is only to use the flax seeds as food, but they would think that using the flax seeds for other purposes as they were used is not a problem. So there they mamish want you to destroy it. You should never to use it. Halacha chafal. Now gedulei truma, produce that grows from truma, it's only midrabanan. Elama shasurim lezarim. That's the key. Don't think it has really truma. Yeah, it's going to have less value, but it's the Chachamim didn't give it a din of truma. They said that it's asur lezarim. Why? Here we go. Gazru Chachamim aleim she'asurim lezarim ketruma. Because if there'll be truma today, should be other kohen. If you would be allowed to plant it, then he'll wait for the planting season. Now, guys, the planting season is not whenever you want. Then you would keep it in your house for a very long amount of time. Shema yasha etzli kadesh Yisrael v'teitzei l'chulin. And what will happen during that time? Someone will accidentally eat truma tameya. Why? Because only truma can become a shlishi. This is not even a truma midrabanan. This is a gzeira. A zar cannot eat it. Also, a tful yoim can eat it, even though tful yoim cannot eat truma. They have to wait until ahead of shemesh. First mishnah brachas kechulin. Now, that is only that which grew from truma, but gedulin, that's already chulin l'chol davar. As we have in the Mishnayos, right? Normally, zaroi becomes disintegrated. But there are certain products, like an onion, the Mishnah gives that when you plant it, the seed does not disintegrate, it begins to grow on it. That's more problematic, because then it's more of the original. We don't say that. By gedulin, that im rabu hagidulin al ho'ikir. The Gedulei HaGedulin. So then we say the Gedulim Hashniyim Malin Esa'ikar. Malin Esa'ikar. They elevate. They take out the Isur. Afapisha Ein Zarikola and Hakoil, even the original. Mutal Azarim. Chein Trumas Chutz La'aretz. Or Hameduma. Duma means Chulin and Truma were mixed together without the 100-to-1 ratio. So everything is considered mixed. V'toisefes Truma. What's Toisefes Truma, guys? We learned this in Perek Gimel. Guys, Midoy Raisa, there's no minimum amount of Truma. With Rabbanon, let's say a Benin should get 2%. What happens if a person separated less than 2%? And then they say, "Oh, it wasn't enough," so they separated again. Is that Truma or not? Not so simple, because since Midoy Raisa, the little that you separated was already Truma. So on that level, when you added to it, that's nothing. But mit Rabbanon, it is something. You got it? That's the Sefas Truma. The Zeiroine Gina that are Bechlal not eaten, going Zera Lefas Utsunoin, Afa Pisha Oisa Lefas Utsunoin Truma, but the Zeiroine Gina don't have that in. Here, all of these, since to begin with, it's only a rabbinic issue. If you planted it, mutarim. But in Chol Chol Davar, that is Gevaldik. Okay. Because flax seed is usually not eaten, and therefore the requirement to separate truma is only midrabanan. That's the key. Anything that's only truma midrabanan, if it was sown, the gedulim are completely chulin. Yeah. No, lefes and soinen is that their seeds are not edible at all, so there's no din of truma in the seeds. That's the word. That's what we had before. Halacha again. Chabre, these brakim are like, wow. Hazareya truma tameya. If you sowed tame truma, even though the gedulim are tohayim, because again, midoy raisa, what comes is not the original. But as we just learned, it's asurulas, harem asurum bachilu. Yakir, not only asurum bachila to a non-coin, even a coin cannot eat. Because it came from something that cannot be eaten. So again, that's only the Rabbanon. We don't allow you to eat it. And v'yotzu alon shniyim v'chatochan. Now, is already mutar v'achila. Very good. At a certain point, we're speaking about truma tameya. Truma tameya. One second. Truma, Micah. Anything that grows, the first gidulin that grows is also always also lazarim. This halacha is behemshich to chav gimel. That truma tameya, what comes out cannot even be eaten by a kohen. But if it's a product that it produces one set of leaves and you cut it off and another set of leaves, now what grows is mutar to be eaten by a kohen after the second round. After the second leaves, Olin. Now halacha chafei shesile chulin shenitmu not truma. Stam plants of chulin that are tamei uzuran, and now after it grew, there's no derabanan gzedas here. Now from everything that grows, guys, you give 2%. So now vasarim harei mutarim because sharei taru b'zriya. Very good. Halacha vav. So you have a grain heap, and in the grain heap you have a stalk of grain. Now it shouldn't have been there, but you don't have machines. People they forgot a stalk of grain. Without you separating it from the stalk and without you winnowing it, in the grain heap there's a stalk of grain. And mericha, which is the smoothing out, is the final action. From now, you're chayiv to separate Trumas u'Maisos. Now, the chiyuv of separating was chal also on the shiboilus. Even though normally a shiboilus is not mechuyev to be tithed, you got it because the shiboilus was in the kli. Now, so now, now this shiboilus is a tevel. Here's the question: what happens if you plant it? Shesala. If you planted that shiboilus, And then you decided this will be truma. Truma. On one hand, gewaldig. No. Yeah, guys, like this. When I separate tithings, truma, let's bring it to truma. It's from a product that's mechuyev to be tithed on other products that are mechuyev to be tithed. Good. I cannot, if I have a grain of a pile of grain that was smooth, so this is now obligated to be tithed, and I have other grains that didn't reach this stage, I cannot separate from that on this, because that's not mechuyev yet to be tithed. Now, you have a sheboilus. The sheboilus is not mechuyev to be tithed, but if the sheboilus is in the kri, then the chiyuv of tithing was chal on it. But if you planted it, that's the question. Now you can argue, now that you planted it, now it's like a new plant. If it's a new plant, it's not in the category of something that needs to be tithed, and it cannot be used as truma for something else. That's the pshat. And it's a suffix truma. If new produce begin to grow from it, if it took root, then it cannot be, then it's no longer mechuyev. But if nothing would have grown yet, since it was in the kri when you did the miruach, it's considered something that's mechuyev to be tied. It could become the truma. Chayav misa. And just to make it clear, Yaron, Eran, if I go into a field now and I rip out a kernel and eat it, I'm not chayav misa. It's when I eat something, arai, before it's obligated to be tithed, it's mamash okay. If it's mine, if it's yours, I'm stealing. That's another sin. But that's only if you ate it. What happened? Ate it normally. What's unusual eating? We have this also in Hilchos Shabbos. If a person bends down like an animal and he chews it off the ground, that's not the way human beings eat. The keren you have to pay. Money you have to pay. No. Exactly. No, it's the penalty part you have to have for truma. He spotted from the Chemish he was a shoygig. But if I b'shoygig eat your produce, I'm chayv to pay with the keren. Okay. Halacha of zayin. Sada shel geduli truma. Now we already said asur l'zar, right? It's midrabanan asur l'zar. Now, guys, truma doesn't have to be lekid and shikchad and peyad, but it does have to be, because midai raisa, it's proper chulin. Chayev is beleked v'shikchad peyad v'trumas v'maisa v'maisa ani. V'aniya Yisrael v'aniya ka'anam loitem amenu v'atona seilu. But there's one thing: since midrabanan it cannot be eaten by Yisraelim, so those aniyim cannot eat it, Yakir. So aniya kahanim can even eat it. Aniya Yisrael have to sell them l'kahanim at the truma, which is a lesser amount of money, and the money goes to the aniyim. Because he cannot eat it, because midrabanan it's asurim lazarim, but it's chulin. If it's chulin, you have to separate the tithes. This is great. The final halach of this chapter, halach of ches, achoyvet gidulin elu. A person crushes such produce. Now you have produce that midrabanan may not be eaten by zarim. The ideal way of working with it is not having animals trample on it. Because when that happens, you put a lot at the same time, and some of it will somehow make its way to people and they might eat it. You have to control it more. But if you were dash bebehema, here there's another issue. What's the other issue? There's a isur midaraisa to muzzle your animal when he's threshing on food. This food is usher to be consumed. So what do? So to resolve that, you put the same type of produce in the basket on the mouth of the animal. So the animal doesn't have access to the food proper, but he sees that and he gets to eat from his basket the same type of food. Which is the lav. Which is the isur midrabanan. The solution is that he gets to eat from that same type. So that's Gavaldik. And now moving on to today's final chapter, Perek Shnei Masor. Yes, it is. First of all, guys, we have to get moving. We're going to learn over here first about the Isur of making Truma Tameh. And then we're going to learn of how Truma was given to the Kohen. And if you remember in the beginning, we learned about, let's say, Peah. In Hilchas Matnas Aniyim, Peah, Leket, Shikhan Peah. The owner doesn't get to choose whom to give it to. It was in the earlier matanis of this series, a lot of it, you have to leave it in the field, whoever comes. Truma, you get to choose who you give it to. You can't keep it, and with many more pratim. Guys, this chapter only has 22 halachas. These are big chapters. And let's start with halacha al L'chaim. Asur l'tamei es truma shel Eretz Yisrael. Truma Eretz Yisrael is truma midoiraisa. You are not allowed to make a tamei. Mamish, like you cannot make kachim tamei. Nor v'lo yivienu l'dei tumah. Nor can you bring about a situation where it will likely contract tumah. We don't say, if I'm not doing it directly, I have no problem. Yes, you have a problem. You have to guard it. And also, v'lo yafsi, then you may not spoil it, but you have to use it for its proper use. And if it became tamei, then why to use it? Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. Don't spoil it. Don't use it. How can you use it? Tameya, matlika tameya. However, that's only if the truma is midoraisa. But muter l'tami trumas chutz la'aretz b'truma shel Torah, not only b'truma derabbanan. In other words, afal pi b'chlal, anything that grows b'chutz la'aretz is by default tamei midrabbanan. So what do you mean you can make a tamei? It's tamei anyway. No. Tumas eretz ha'amim, gush eretz ha'amim is tamei midrabbanan. But you can make a tamei doiraisa. That is shimon devreim. Why am I allowed to do it? Because the whole truma is only midrabbanan. A great example. A nida is allowed to separate challah b'chutz la'aretz, even though no one will be allowed to eat it. And prior to the nida having contact with the challah, it was only tamei midrabbanan. Now she's making a tamei doiraisa. Since chalas chutz la'aretz is only midrabbanan, we make a bracha on it, but it's only midrabbanan. You can lachatchila make a tamei, which is today. Yichap. People don't realize that. Like, how can a woman now bake challah when she's separating the challah? Is separating the challah. She's a nida. The moment she separates the challah, now she's making that tamei doiraisa. Doesn't matter because she's chutz la'aretz. Masha'enkein, if there would be a dough that's tahor in the Holy Land, a nida would not be allowed to separate it. As we learned in Perek Zayin, halacha beis, truma shenitmas b'safek. Now you have another category. So here's my challenge. I can't eat it because it might be tamei. I can't burn it because if it's tahor, it's not allowed to be burned if it's meant to be eaten. Toilin, to wait. Lo yerchem lo yisarfim. Ela te monachas achet titamei tuma vadois. You have to wait until something happens and then b'tisarf. All of us, wait, and then we get to burn them. Patience. The yesham sfeikois. However, there are times that even though it's only a suffix, yes, you can right away burn the truma, as we will learn. Be'inyan truma v'tara. We're going to learn this in Hilchos Sharavos. Truma is Perek Yud Gimel. But as a rule, toilin halacha gimel chavi shel truma, and now you have a suffix truma. Harei ze lo yechadish whatever. Do nothing with it. Lo yizizarem mekoimo. Don't uncover it, and we're going to learn a lot again about uncovering that any wine that remains uncovered because of the chashash that a snake, then you can have to get rid of it. You can't do that. You can't resolve it by bringing another issue. Leave it. And then maybe people are going to have it. No. That's the rule. So here's what's happening, guys. You have wine that is truma, which is pure. It broke in an upper vat. Now, guys, in the lower vat, there's chulin, that's tamei. The upper vat is wine of truma tohira, and it's seeping into the lower vat, that's chulin. Let me explain to you the problem. The problem is like this, guys. If the lower vat has a lot of chulin tamei, a lot, the ratio will be 100 to 1 or more, at least everything will have a din of chulin. But if the lower vat doesn't have that amount of chulin tameya, understand what's going on over here. When the wine falls into the bottom vat, it's going to make it into demai, meduma, because it wasn't nullified. And yakir, since the bottom vat is chulin tameya, which has truma in it, so now it will become truma that's tamei. So now you're creating a scenario where no one will be able to benefit from the wine. That's the issue here. So im yachal lahatzim amenu revius b'tahara yatzel avad. That means if, now what will be the solution, guys? When the wine is dripping down, let me go get a keli that's tar, and let me put it under the stream. By the time I run, by the time I come, I'm going to lose some of it. So if I can get another barrel that's tahira to bring it here, even though I'm going to lose some of the wine, but I'm going to end up saving one revius or more, that's what I should do. Now, what will be the other alternative? To use my hands to siphon it off to another place. What's the issue of using my hands? My hands are tummy as a shady. So I'm being metama the truma. Even though he's making it tummy, so why seconds? If he's making the truma tummy, what's the benefit here? That the chulin, which is tummy, will be allowed to be eaten by Yisrael. You know, this is going to get ruined anyways. I'm not allowed to be metama truma, but this truma now is going to become tummy anyways. You have to chap. The problem is that not only will this truma become tummy when it falls into the chulin, but if there isn't enough ratio, even a Yisrael won't be able to have the chulin. Without Netil Sidaim, we learn Netil Sidaim. Now, if you have enough time to do Netil Sidaim, do it. We're speaking about a case where it's Einsman, it's going to ruin. Now, all of that is only, like we mentioned, because if you will allow it to fall into the bottom vat, there isn't enough chulin to be mevatel it. If there's a lot of chulin there, then let it fall. Number one, and that's the problem. You're going to lose. Then Shanei Yidama Hakol the apostle. You understand? Then let it fall on the bottom one. I know it's going to become chulin. So what? But it will have a din of chulin. Or if it's chavia shel shemen, we say what's the difference between wine and oil? Hold on, play the difference. Oil was also used for fuel. I know that you would have preferred to use the oil also for baking or for anointing, but it's also used for fuel. So it's not the end of the world if you won't have the ratio. It's going to become truma tameya. So what? So you'll use it for the leka. By wine is not meant to be ointed. Wine is not meant to be burned. It's a much bigger loss if wine becomes tummy. So what's going on over here? There's Rabbi Zajac. Now here, what's the problem over here? I'll tell you the problem, Yakir. The oil is spilling to the floor. That's the case, not into a vat. Here, if I'm not going to be matzel, the shemen, it's going to go into the ground. I'm losing it. You understand that shemen of truma, my hands are tamei. I'm not allowed to be metama truma, but if I won't do anything, I'm going to lose everything. So if yachala hatzal levius betara, like Yakir says, wash negel vaser. I know that, shkoyach. But by the time I go and wash negel, come back, if there'll be at least one revius of oil, then you have to do that. You're losing the rest. I'm not allowed to be metama the truma. But if you're going to do that, you won't even have a revius yatzel betuma. Chop it with your hands or use a tummy keli. Because shekim shenu v'achavius ain't a muzer shel yatzel betuma. You're losing all your money. Oh, here we say if a person is losing all the money, Chazal said better for you to do it. Very good. Halacha vav. This is a galus halacha. And you're traveling. During the travel, people need food. Comes to you, the guy, and he tells him, "Tein li achas mehem." And what was his threat? He's dealing with a Jew. Not if not, I'll punch you in your nose. No, if not, I'll touch all of your breads. So, he knows how to talk to a Yid. So, what's the issue again? It's better to give the guy one kikar shal truma at least the other ones won't become tummy. But you can't give it directly. So watch you. Yaniach lefanav achas ala sela. V'al yitnen lo techiyadai. That not. Kidei shalei tamat no v'yadayim. Very good. The other solution will be to punch him in the nose. Halacha zay. Hatilson, whoever has the Zoom, Kevan in the last Pedek already showed you a beautiful picture of this chilba tilson type of dip. V'hakarshinim and vetch of truma, since they're not called Michael Adam, here's the thing, guys. Something that's been given to animals, but you can't be matamit. The animals are eating it. So first of all, you could do it. You could do everything betuma, but you know what you cannot do? So here, another rule, guys. For any item to become tamei, it has to become first mukhshar. What you cannot do is be machshad it and while you're being matamet at the same time. That's too much. While you're putting it into the water, because when you put it into the water, that phase is what's going to be machshavit. The part is that you're being machshavit and you're being metamed the bas achas. That already they didn't allow. But after you soak it in water, even though you're going to touch it with your yodayim, doesn't matter. Because it makes sense. A human being is not eating it. Guys, these are foods that are not meant l'maychal adam. They are meant only l'maychal behema. Lefikach noisem truma still smekashin l'kain ama aretz. Or the whole issue of giving truma to ama aretz is that you can't give it to ama aretz because she's going to be metamet. Who cares? You can be metamet that which is given, even though there's one place when you're putting it in water that you're not worried about. Halachiches ein makpidim truma. Oh, here we go. Ein makpidim truma eitz alama aretz kain ama. You don't even give it to entrust. That means it's my truma. I'm asking him, can you please watch it over? Now, by a Yisrael Ha'aretz, I could give it to. A Kohen Ha'aretz, I can't give it to. Because a Kohen can eat Truma. He might eat it. And what's the problem? He will be Matama it. Abel Mafkidim, I say it's Yisrael Ha'aretz. As long as they put it b'chlei cheres hamuk of tzamid pasel. That was another issue. Even if you put it in a tzamid pasel, if the Peders are muksher, you got a problem. Why you have a problem? Because his wife is Anida, and if she moves that klicheres, it's matzel mepnei ha'oil. It's not matzed from hesed. We're going to learn this later. Okay, beautiful. Allah chanai. Ein oisim amaretz trumas zeised b'taram. So let me say like this, guys. We're speaking about a balabas who's an amaretz. We're speaking about an oil producer that is a chaver. There's a general rule: don't be metama, don't give truma to an amaretz. This guy has to make a living. So we're trying to figure out in what scenarios could the press owner, the chaver, do a service for the owner and Amaretz, and when can he not do it? Because if what he's getting is tahar and what he's giving is tahar, and now the Amaretz will be matamed, that is when he cannot do it. So that's what he could do. So ein oisel Amaretz truma zeisa v'tara. So the first case is that the owner, the Amaretz, put the olives in the press. He already squeezed it into the oil. In other words, the olives already became muksher by the owner. And more than that, I'll tell you more than that. Here's the issue. If the owner, Yakir, that's the first case, put it in the olive press, and he began to squeeze it, then the chaver is coming to finalize everything for him. There's a likelihood that the owner was already matame it in the beginning. When people will observe that this press owner, the chaver, giving it to him, they're going to think he's only giving him something that's tahor. It's already tummy. People might come to eat it. That's why ein oisel ha'aretz truma zeisa b'tara. That's what it means. Aval oisel lo zeisa chulin b'tara. What you could do is that if he's doing the entire process, you know what's the entire process? He's only getting the olives from the Amaretz. And he's pressing it, and he's separating it. He's already separating it. That he's allowed to do. When he's going to give it to the Amaretz might be matama that. We say Mishum Kedei Chayv Shel Badod. In other words, it will be, how can you make a living in Israel if you can only do this service for chaverim? But in a scenario where the chaver cannot protect it because he only came on the scene, that must be the case, where there's a possibility that the oil is already tamei, then the observer seeing the chaver giving back the chulin part, the truma part to the owner will think it's tahar when it's already tamei. That you can't do. That's the case. Now, even though he's allowed to give it to him, he's giving everything betara. He's giving everything betara. You hear Yakir? Yeah. What's so difficult to understand the process? No. Again, if the olives were given to the chaver when they were already mukhshard, which means that we consider the possibility that the oil is already tamei. Whenever there's a chashash that the oil is already tamei, the chaver cannot do this procedure of properly squeezing it and then separating the truma. Whenever he's given pure olives that are not mukhshard, they're not tamei, he can squeeze it, he can make oil, and then he can separate the chulin and the truma and give back to him the bigger amount of chulin and the smaller amount of truma. But when he gives him back the truma, he has to give it bekeli she'einu makabel truma, like in a kli avanim. He has to tell him, truma. And the way he tells it to him is by warning him. He says, if you're going to touch the truma oil, you're going to make everything turn into tevel, which is a lie. You're telling him that because you're doing everything you could to make sure that he won't touch it. But you are allowed to do it. And we don't say, how can you even do that? If I'm an owner, Yakir, I own oil, and I want to give my truma, I'm not allowed to give my truma to Ma'amoritz, because he's going to be matameh. But if I'm a manufacturer, I'm getting the raw material from the Ma'aretz. When it's already tamei, or it might be tamei, I cannot manufacture for it. If everything is tight, I can manufacture. And when you give it back to him, this guy already made the separation. He separated it. He's giving it in a clay oven, which means the Ma'aretz just taking it will not be matameh. The only chashash is he might touch it, so he warns him. Yisrael she'oisa peiros b'tuma. Doesn't care which. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. So the din is ain't bites nevimai. You're not allowed to harvest grapes in him. Because if everything is already tamei, what will end up happening is that when you come to the wine is already tamei. He's going to separate the wine. You're involved in making a truma tameya. Avol meilichin imay chavis ligas, or maybe in minagas. When, let's say, if you want to make a living of being a porter, bringing the chavias to the gas at that phase, guys. At that phase, the barrels are empty. You're doing nothing wrong. When you're taking the full barrels back, at that point, the wine is already tamei. Elamah, making a living, schlepping tamei wine. I know the wine should not have been made tamei. The truma should not have been, but it made already tamei. Because we're trying to give more opportunities for people to make a living. But directly being involved in making truma tamei, one cannot. That was another good word. Don't think that if the olives and grapes became tamei, the wine and the oil will be tamei. It doesn't always work that way. Let me tell you like this, guys. Even though we're going to learn, guys, liquids, they can become tamei very easily, and they go back to be a rishon. But in order for some food item to acquire tuma, the source that's imparting, if it's food, must be in the amount of a kibetza or more. And if it's less than the amount of a kibetza, it doesn't have enough koyach to impart tuma. That will be the solution. Yes, that's step number one. And the wine and the oil will be considered pure. And I'll tell you another thing, guys, another detail. Prior to me separating truma, what's the status of the wine and the oil? Yakir? I didn't separate truma yet. So also, what's the liquid? Chulin. Chulin will not become tamei if the olives and the grapes are tamei. On a sheni, that's the case. That's even better. They cannot be matama. They cannot be matama anything, even if it's liquid. Rishon, yeah. If it's a sheni, cannot be matamet. So b'chal there's no problem. No, it's tahar. Then you separate the truma. But ve'im nitmu achar shenasu truma. Here's the problem. If the Zaysim and the Anavim were already designated as Truma, and now they're Tameh, does that mean that you cannot squeeze the wine? You could squeeze wine out of it. Here's the issue. You can squeeze, that's what I said, the Kabetza. And you can squeeze it in a way where the wine will be taught. Now, another thing, if the wine and the oil is considered part of, so then you would say, if the grape is Tameh, it's automatically Tameh. We don't say it that way. We lechatchila consider the juices of the olive and the grape to be something separate. And an olive and a grape are not the size of a kibetza. So if you have enough anavim or zaysim in the size of a kibetza, which is already truma, that's a problem. If the source is truma, that which comes is already truma. I know that. And truma can become a shlishi. I know that. And the mothers are sheni. I know that. Now you have the solution is they less than a kibetza. This is beautiful. And it's gewaldig because now the mashkin hayotzim and mutar b'shasiyah l'kayhanim. You can even pour it on the mizbeah. Now you have the first kasha is, how is that? What do I mean? Let me ask, if the apple is tamei, what is any part inside the apple tahar? No, because apple is apple. But the liquids in the grapes are not the same. Now, and now what will be the issue? The nimsa hamashke mistame. Whenever you have the words with the chidik, it means it acquires from the source. Now, in the beginning of halacha yud aleph, if it was not yet truma, I right there don't have a problem. Why? Because chulin cannot become a shlishi. Guys, it's beautiful. Only by Novim Azaysim. Now, nothing. If the payers are to begin with a shlishi l'truma, guys, truma cannot become a revi. So vitamin don't have a problem. It cannot acquire truma. Darcha megaso beisabad and mamashka truma tohira because ein shlishi ois revi but truma. As we will learn, the Ian Tares, halacha yud beis pas truma shenit meis. So now the bread cannot be eaten. In other words, when people see it in a wood pile, they will know not to eat it. What's the concern? Maybe people will know that it's tummy. So so again, you have to make it inedible, shulkan, and you put it in a chlemos. And then so then you have to right away bury it. That is uncovered. Now you may not even drink it. Interesting. You don't say koivin. Koivin is because of kedusha. This, it's not, it's different. Yishafeh. That if you find holes, we learned that in Pedicute Bays, right? It was left uncovered enough time that a snake can come and drink from it. Yeah, kid, you need coffee. Where's your memory? You left it. It's waking up soon. So what should you do? Get rid of it right away. I think yishafich means kibura. I take it back. Yishafich, that's for you bury liquid by pouring it in the ground. You have to run. Here also, afapi that it's truma, you have to burn it. Same thing. Why? Because there's a sakana. Now we're learning the second topic of this chapter. We have another few minutes, and we're going to, God willing, get through it. So what's the question? What's the topic now? Like we mentioned, many of the matnas haniyim, the balabayas doesn't even have toivas hana. You don't get to choose which ani is going to get it. But trumais, here we go. Allah of asur l'koyin little truma, can't chap truma, or to take the other matanis. First of all, okay, many steps. First of all, the owners have to separate it. Can you imagine a kohen is coming? He's seeing Am Yisrael. He's seeing my kedin. He knows I have to separate truma. So step number one is a kohen should think, I'm going to take the 2%. No, you can't. I have to do that. In other words, the owner, has to first separate it, and then you'll be zoich in it. In other words, it's step number 2. Even if I already made the harama, you cannot take it. Even after I said, now, I don't have to give it via dying, but I have to tell them, I would like for you to take it. And by the way, that's the way it worked. Most people had the Kahanim collect it from the Goranis, but they would tell which coin to collect it. In other words, the if the owner already separated it, the wrong of the coin was he took it on his own, then it's his. Because on the other hand, it doesn't belong to the Ba'alim. Tevis Hana is not Mamoin, so you can't say the coin is a Ganef. Allah Tezai, Koyin Shanas no like Truma. And he finds in the Truma Dvaram Achedim. Don't think that the owners gave you the Dvaram Achedim. What likely happened was no one touches Truma. So if I have a diamond ring and I want to give it to my wife as a gift, so I'm finding for a place for her not to discover it, it's shaykh for me to put it in my pile of Truma. And then the Mi Chacham, I forgot, I gave the coin the whole Truma. He has to assume that this belongs to the Balabayas. He cannot keep it, Mishum Gazel. The Balabas gave it to him. No, Shema Achedim Inicho Shamat Sheyitlu. They forgot it there. But it wasn't meant to be given as a gift. Allah Yuzayin. Ein Yisrael Chayav on the top of Truma Levim Min Agorim Le'ir. The owner doesn't have to schlep it into the city. Or Min Ambid Yishuv. The Kohanim have to go collect. In other words, who pays for the shipment? Kohanim. Elo Kohanim Yoitzim Ligranis Yisraelim Leislim Lohem Chalkam Sham. Now, Ve'im Lo Yatsu. The owner can say, I'm leaving it. But if you have chayas and behemoths, which might eat it up, or other people, it's not guarded there, so the owner cannot leave it there. So the solution is, the Chachamim says that the Yid should bring it to the city, and he gives it to the kohen of his choice, and you know what he does? He asks for the kohen to pay for the transportation. Because that's a chil Hashem. So that money he can take. Now, next, they can go and become helpers in the granaries, because now that they're there, they're doing work. It's like an exchange. You're like selling it without selling it, but you're selling it. Wow. Now, by the way, if the Yisrael gets back the Truma, it's not that the Yisrael can eat it, but now we can sell it to a kohen. Is that called giving it? Yeah, that is in other words, legally, that's the whole thing. The first day of Sukkot. If I give you a gift, I'm going to ask you to give it back. It's called a gift. But for us, also lem sheyachtavu to muslim islas. They shouldn't chap it. Even to ask, can I get your Truma? Asur. That's not bachavadik. Elonot l'mechavik. Shal shulchan hamokai meimoichlim. V'al shulchanei of God Almighty hem shoisim. Umatonis elu lashem. And it is God Almighty that is giving it to the kohen. Don't need to ask for it. Like a fundraiser. I'm not going to ask for you for the $1 million. It's your merit to give it. I won't even ask. The Eden Project. By the way, the Shemer Gita is a kohen, but it's like paying him. Even if he's a kohen. Same thing, if the kohen is doing some service to the gifter, that's called a chilo. Elam Kain, he paid him. That's different. If he paid the Shemer Gita regardless, now we can give it to him. But a Shoy Yisrael, Leimer Yisrael Acher, that's the most you can do. That's the Tevis Hana. It's not a coin to a Yisrael to a Yisrael. Hey, L'chasel, I'm giving you a coin. He would give him a small amount of money to give the Truma or the Bechor Shamartonis to that coin, or to my grandson or grandfather, or to whatever, to my nephew that's a coin. Right? That you can do that. I was going to give it away anyways, bechinam. And the chavere has to be a Yisrael. Hey, take out the coin and give it to the one of the two. You're going to give it to the Uven or Shimon. Give it to the Uven. But Levi. Hey, lochachelik zebatovis hano. Hareza asur. It looks like he's selling the truma. It looks like he's selling the truma. The chen also las is chayre betrumais. Even though he bought it from another coin and he's selling it to another coin, don't do that. Final halacha chav beis asaram. Even though we mentioned before that the owner doesn't have to transport it into the city, which means normally kahanim come and pick it up, but there are 10 types of people which you would have thought could collect it. They may not collect it. Even though they're allowed to eat it, or even though not only are they allowed to eat it, but if a man can give it to his wife, a man can give it to his evet, they're not allowed to collect it directly because there's going to be a chashash of atakola. No, these are the 10. And why is that? Why is that, guys? Because she'ein boidas lifresh chukai pnei she'ein be'elu da'as. You know what that means, guys? I want you to know what this means because they cannot give birchos kahanim. And by the way, even though nowadays we have katanim giving birchos kahanim, but that's only because there's a gadol there. Only because there's good. Since they cannot yet give birchos kahanim, because they don't have das, you don't give it to them in the base Quranis. Now, when they at home, they can eat it, but they cannot be the collectors. Tumtum and Androgenes are called better b'fnei yatzim. And Eved, you're kidding? People are going to think that he's a kohen, even though again he's allowed to eat it. Shema yiru ha'ovrim basada ve'idu olav shu kohen. The oral and the tamei mipnei shema usim. A woman, even though while she's married to a kohen, she can eat it. She cannot collect it. Shema tis gadesh. Another thing, if a woman is going to start collecting from the Geronish, she'll have yichud. Hanoise isha shein again a sloy. Konsu oisoi shalayachli go beis agronish ache yigrosheno, ache yigorsheno. However, even though they may not collect it, you can send it to them with the only exception of a man who marries the isha shein hagenesloy and the tummy and the adol shein mishachal lehem klal. Cheder gevaldik till he continued. It's late, but we did it. These are big prakim.